That word-by-word description, verbatim in Arabic sources, black as a night and magnificent. He was the most important man in Arabia.
Rashidi says Islam also had an African who played a large part in shaping the customs of the Islamic faith. This drawing is of a man named Bilal. It came from a book written by two Washington, D.C. school teachers in the 1940s. The book and Rashidi described Bilal as one of Islam's first converts, an African slave. The slave is also the person Muhammad designated to create the call to worship. African researchers and heritage-hungry black teachers may know about Bilal, but the few Muslims I talked to didn't.
The Arabs are of different colors themselves.
Palestinian Abdur Rahim Dudar teaches math at a local Atlanta high school. He says racial considerations don't mean much to Muslims because they consider all other Muslims as brothers. Syrian Mohammed Moad agrees. Though no longer a practicing Muslim, he says he had no knowledge of Bilal and considered the Prophet's heritage Arabic, like his.
We study his, where he came from and who he is, but not what he looked like. I don't know, I don't even remember what he looked like.
Okay.
Because what was happening at that time tells the story about why Islam came to power. At the time where Muhammad was born, there were so many people were worshipping so many idols and so many different smaller religions, although Judaism and Christianity were known, but not in that part of the world, not as much in that part of the world. So Muhammad grew up in an atmosphere that had a lot of trouble and a lot of chaos, so he wanted to find a religion that will unify the people.
The father of the Prophet Muhammad is an Arab.
What do those people look like today? What did they look like in the time of the Prophet?
Well, they look dark. They look just like me, dark people.
Okay.
So I figure if your grandfather is black as the night and magnificent, and he has 10 sons who are called black as crows, and a crow's a pretty black bird, and your father is as black as a crow, it stands to reason you're going to have some of that too. So that's what we know about Muhammad. You have black, what do they call them? The caliph.
Right.
You have black sheriffs. You have blacks occupying all the most important positions of Islam. Most of them, unfortunately, many of them were what they call eunuchs. One of the most savage things that the Arabs did was they introduced castration into Africa. For example, I recently read an account somewhere that in Ethiopia, where they would capture these slaves and have them before they sent them into various places of the Middle East, they would castrate something like 50,000 black boys every year. And this is like a documentation for like 200 years. Over 50,000 black children were castrated before they were sold into Islam, so that even if individuals rose to positions of power, you couldn't have it. Yeah, you had no heir.
Other religions may have African origins also. You're looking at some of the oldest known statues of the Buddha. Notice the flat nose, full lips, and peppercorn hair. You see the same features in some of the major carvings of India's older religions. African researcher Rashidi says Buddha, Zen Taoism, and several other religions may have had their foundations in the ancient Kemetic church.
Diop, the great late Senegalese scholar, says that all the major religious movements in Asia were founded about the same time. You have Buddha, you have Confucius, you have Zoroaster, and you have Lao Tzu, who we were just talking about, the founder of Taoism.
Right.
All of these religions begin to crop up in the 6th century BC, all of them. And Diop says that it is highly likely that the Buddha or the Buddhas and these other figures that I mentioned were Egyptian priests who fled Egypt at a time of national turmoil.
What does this say about world religion? Well, probably the same thing it says about world history, science, and education. For the last 500 years, we've based the majority of our beliefs on information gathered and distributed during the Middle Ages.
It's not that that information is necessarily inaccurate, it's just that it doesn't present a balanced approach to African contributions. I hope that this series has helped you ask more questions, not only about the contributions of those of us of African descent. I hope you have started to ask questions about the cultures of all people, no matter what traditional wisdom says. For African American Culture, A Second Look, I'm Marty Chitwood.
And I think there is a growing awareness and a sense of pride in the community. And I think this will lead to the development of schools that serve that need.
And the Bible is not a crutch for us to be in subjection to other people.
That you've been answering to names that have nothing to do with your culture and your history. Colored means nothing because everything is colored one way or the other.
Negro.
Negro means nothing because some lazy Spaniard or Portuguese took the descriptive adjective and made a noun out of it.
Black.
Black tells you how you look, but it don't tell you who you are. The proper name of a people must always relate to land, history, and culture. And anytime you address a people by any name that fails to relate to land, history, and culture, you have called them out of their name.